But my biggest challenge always with the personal development industry is it limits the flourishing of human life to the self.
Mhm.
Whereas, and I kind of fell into that paradigm for a long time, and it's very easy to do that because self-development almost teaches you, and rightly, to focus on what's within your locus of control.
Right.
In many ways, it creates a limitation because then it says to people, well, these things outside us are so big, so these agendas are so grand that how can we influence them? But we can influence the world around us, and it's.
Welcome to the Life of Passion podcast. I'm your host, Dallas Michael Sear, and for the last 15 years, I've been a speaker and life coach, supporting my clients in living lives and building businesses filled with purpose and passion. And here at the Life of Passion podcast, we speak to passionate entrepreneurs, inspired creatives, and conscious leaders who have amazing stories of living lives of passion. So if that sounds good to you, if that's something that you desire more of, let's go. What's up, friends? Welcome to another great episode of Life of Passion podcast. And I'm super excited for this one. Before we get into that, I want to share with you, if you don't know, if you haven't, officially met me or been in my world for a little while, I am a master life coach and have been a professional speaker and keynote speaker for over 15 years. My first actual keynote, you can find it on YouTube here, way back from 2009. And it was called Your Challenges Are Your Greatest Gifts. And it actually ended up becoming the very platform for my work. It's what I launched Ignite Purpose off of. And since then, it's been a pretty wonderful ride. And what I've also had the pleasure of doing through a program called Speak, Express, Impact is helping other aspiring speakers to craft their message, to move through any resistance and blocks that they may have from being as activated and, powerful and focused and authentic and clear as they can be on video or on stage, so they can share their products, so they can share their mission, so they can share their message, so they can make a greater impact and shine their light even brighter. So if you're someone who struggles with that and really wants to kind of unlock your ability to share your voice, share your story, share your message, your mission, then I would love to connect with you. Just either comment below or message me, and I can share with you what's coming up for Speak, Express, Impact, both working privately one-on-one with individuals as well as getting ready to prepare for a group. So just tune in, stay tuned, and reach out to me if you don't want to wait. And if you've got something you want to start working on right now, I would love to connect with you. Now, in this episode, I'm excited to share with you my buddy, Dan Astin-Gregory, another man who shares three names like myself. And I'll read his bio real quick, but, like any bio, really doesn't do any justice to who this man is. Dan Astin-Gregory is a creator, activist, doing a lot of that lately, which I love and we'll talk about. He's also the host of the Dan Astin-Gregory Podcast, where he explores how to live freely and fully in this very rapidly changing world that it is. And he's the founder of Elevate Labs and instigator of Free Humanity Movement. The Free Humanity Movement, this is one thing where I really appreciate about him, because he puts his money, his time, his energy where his mouth is. He's truly, truly not just doing the talk, but walking the talk, and actually sharing a lot of great ideas, gathering people together under those ideas to shift the narrative and the potential timeline of where we're heading at this very turbulent time. Now, I met him years ago, and I had the pleasure of being interviewed on his podcast. So it was kind of cool to have this come full circle. But after being connected with him, and then, all the events of 2020 happening, and seeing how he responded and how he reacted made me appreciate and respect him even more. We don't go into great detail about that in this particular episode, which just makes me know that I get to have him back. But we do cover who he is, why he thinks and behaves the way that he does. And when he's going through his own challenges, how does he keep living his life of passionate, because there's so many things that he's very passionate about, and it comes through in this episode. So enjoy. See you on the inside. Yes, my man Dan, how are you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing very well. It's a beautiful Friday afternoon here in the UK. Sun is shining for once here in the UK, so I'm high vibe right now.
Yeah, go get that vitamin D. In all seriousness, so where exactly in the UK are you?
So I moved where I live now 2 years ago. We're on the Bournemouth coast, which is right on the south coast of England, on the Dorset
Okay.
coast. My house is about 10-minute walk from the sea line. I was in the
Beautiful.
ocean this morning. I've got a little men's group. We were cold water plunging this morning. It's definitely still cold in the sea
Is it?
now, but we're nestled beautifully between the ocean and then about 15 minutes drive out from here. We've got the New Forest, so we've got some wonderful tall trees and nature. So it's a really beautiful place in the United Kingdom to live. And I was interviewed on another show today, and I talked about the importance of environment and actually moving here from where we were previously, even though we
Mm,
previously lived. Oh my God, gangbusters change, just
right.
next level acceleration of just everything in my life, just by being in closer to the things that I value most, which is the ocean
Mhm.
and nature.
Yeah. Yeah. There is something that happens without brain into our body when we are closer to those, natural living environments. It's just the oxygen molecules are larger. We breathe more deeply. What it does to our eyes, being able to relax, see green natural environments, what that does to the serotonin in the brain. I mean, all the things, right? We get all of the negative ions, which fight the positive ions, which cause free radicals. I mean, the list can go on. And plus, like you said, if you value it, it just feels good to know that you're in that place and you chose it,
That's right.
right?
Absolutely.
Choosing feels good.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah,
So many years I was living in a city environment, and it has its benefits at certain stages of your life,
sure.
but this is a nice balance because we've got a large town, Bournemouth, nearby, which has got all the kind of things you'd expect in a large scale kind of urban environment, while
Right.
having this access to nature. So yeah, beautifully loving it.
Cool. Yeah. Well, welcome to the Life of Passion podcast. This might already be part of your first answer, a little bit of what we were already sharing, but what do you really feel constitutes living a life of passion for you?
Well, that's a big question. It's one that I've grappled with for a long, long time,
Mm,
actually. And it's one that I've not actually fully understood. And to this day, I consider myself to be very driven, and there's this fire that burns within me that guides my choices I make, the goals that I set, the pursuits that I endeavor upon. But I've never really fully understood what it is that fuels that fire. I know what to fuel it with, but what's the catalyst? I've always explored that. I have a
mm,
deep understanding of my guiding purpose.
mm-hmm.
There's this fire within me that I connect with, which I consider to be my guiding passion, and I can direct that passion in a way that is focused on a business endeavor or a activist endeavor I've learned in the last few years, or towards my family, towards my health. And I think living a life of passion is understanding how to harness that energy that's latent or natural within us,
Mm,
unlock and finding how to liberate more of that energy, and then to choose how we direct it. I think those are the two things, because I used to grapple with the difference between purpose and passion, and I actually think they're intrinsically connected, and that the
amen.
passion can fuel the purpose and the purpose can fuel
Yes.
the passion, and it's like a yin and yang symbiosis. So I think
Mm,
the more we can connect with our outer direction and our inner direction, and the more we can connect with that fire within us. And I'm a Scorpio, so I'm a water sign, but people always associate energy with a fire. But there is that
mhm,
burn, there is that burning within me that I think living a life of passion is being able to direct that energy meaningfully. So.
mm. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love that you touched upon number one, even having like an awareness and a connection to that fire, that energy within, and then that choice of being connected to what fuels you and where do you want to put that, like what direction you want to put that in, and what do you want to use to feed and put your attention towards with that energy, because that's a big thing I think that's coming alive in the world, right? And we'll talk about this in a few different ways, I'm sure, but that like awareness and choice, that like sovereign, individual independent choice, like really waking up, you have this will within you and this power to choose. And so I really really like that. And so where are some of the places that you're pointing that now in your life?
Well, it's interesting that life goes in cycles, and actually, my life was took massive transformative change in direction in 2020 as a result of the last few years, and we can talk about that later. But in many ways, I've come full circle to the kind of path I was on prior to 2020, this new decade, which, and again, I've learned from the world of self-development, that you have to be very specific what you wish for and intend in the world, because otherwise it would show up in ways that you would not imagine. And I say that because on the 31st of December 2019, I was thinking about the new decade, because it's not just a new year going into the 2020s, it's a new decade. And I was imagining that this would be, and hoping that this would be the most transformative period, not only for my own life, but actually for the world around us. And then, of course, COVID hit.
Damn you, Dan. It's all your fault.
I can't take responsibility for that. But, the table was set for a transformative period. And I do think it will be. I think it will be. For me, it's been a greatly positive experience, even though it's been very frustrating at a lot of times. There's been challenges because of my map of the world and how I've connected with the world events. But I do believe this is a transformative period in history. And prior to 2020, I just rebranded my company. You were on my original podcast, the Unstoppable podcast, when we were still branded Unstoppable.
Yeah, so fun that you shared that with me. Thank you.
I'm so pleased. Yeah, listeners, check it out. Like, it's only available on YouTube now. I think it's the only place the show is still. I think you might be able to find it on Spotify, but you can see it. And it's well and truly SEO'd, because I just typed in your name and it's one of the top things that still comes up.
Oh, cool.
Boom.
Nice. Okay.
Maybe it was because my channel, but the Unstoppable podcast had this energy of overcoming limitations, and it was really a reflection, a stage of my life where I was grappling with my own sense of identity and my own inner constraints. I went from being like the quietest kid in school to trying to figure out how to find my own sort of inner confidence and my inner direction. People don't believe me now, that they see me like speaking on stage in front of like thousands of people, like doing thousands of podcasts. It's not who I was as a youngster. Maybe it was who I was, but I just had to strip back these layers and transform. But the Unstoppable energy was really about that confronting. It was a very masculine orientated energy of just, defy the odds, defy limitations. It was like push, 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 push. And I learned the consequences of living entirely in that energy. So I rebranded to Elevate in 2019, going into 2020, which was to really harmonize the energies of kind of yin and yang, and to try and bring a more balanced and holistic energy that enabled me to create great ease, flow, and intuition and creativity and visioning. So that became a big shift for me going into 2020. And now, 5 years on, that whole rebrand, and we were going to do this massive 4-day event in 2020, which obviously physical events weren't the done thing in that kind. I did plenty of other events, activist type events during 2020. But now, 5 years on, finally having like this new beautiful activist chapter in my life, which is, I'd never been an activist prior to 2020. I'd been politically engaged and active, but never a protest attender or someone who's particularly vocal about certain things. But now, 5 years on, I'm returning to the ethos of what Elevate was designed to represent. And I'm now channeling my focus to bring that kind of part of my life path, which was really about accelerating and enabling people with great ideas and inspiration and passion, and helping to bring those things into reality. With a systems layer now that I have because of the last 5 years, which has helped me to understand how some of the legacy institutions and systems are not serving the human flourishing, which what the Elevate brand is all about. That is, how do we create a free world where we can all flourish? So now having a new lens on society, and having had a background in self-development and understanding the importance of self-development, but also just looking at development in isolation and taking the self out of it, and looking at how the systems and structures around us can actually become enablers or detractors from our own flourishing. And I would argue many of the structures right now are not in the interest of human nature and nature itself. In fact.
Yeah.
So Elevate, my focus now to wrap up is to focus on the intersection between the inner journey and the external world that we're helping to create. Sounds esoteric, but in practical terms, it means supporting people on the growth path in this period of awakening. But in practical hard terms, it's like, right, you've got an idea for a new way of doing education, or a new way of transforming the financial. You're using decentralized finance, so actually helping liberate those ideas, so we can actually transform some of those institutions outside of the old paradigm and into the new. So bringing back that entrepreneurial focus that I've had to put on hold to a degree. The entrepreneurial spirit has driven me in the last 5 years, but it's not been
Mm-hmm.
practically focused on, hey, I've got a great idea. What can I do with it? And now, 5 years on, I'm really, really excited to be returning to my path that I set out to walk upon in 2020 and had a
Mm.
temporary hiatus because of external events.
Right. Um, I love that vision, and I'm all for it. However, I can support it. That sounds beautiful. I believe that it's often darkest before the dawn. And I know that what we're going through, like, so interesting. A lot of what my coaching has always been is about helping people through those crossroad periods where when we spoke, which is probably why you reached out to interview me at that time. That was really, really the antithesis of what my coaching was and how I got to be a coach, was from having probably a similar, life rebranding experience, right? A death and a death and a rebirth.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about that is I think the world, humanity almost as a whole is going through a rebranding,
It
right?
is.
That's what I think is,
Yeah.
we could say we're going into the golden age and have all these terms for it, but it is very much a death and rebirth in a lot of ways. And what you were sharing that I think is really powerful, I want to touch on is a lot of times, if you don't know any better, depending on your frame of the world, what may feel like you're being cared for is actual control.
Mm.
And you don't know it's control, you just think you're being cared for. And
Yeah.
so I think that's a lot of the sleepiness that we've been seeing in the world that you're speaking to. It's kind of like helping people to wake up to their own self of agency and that sovereignty and that personal responsibility and saying, hey, they're not caring for you. I know it looks that way, but look farther down the road where this may be heading, you know?
Yes.
And I love that you have, and that you're open to supporting kind of that awareness and the systems and the speaking to around the major industries specifically because I think that's where the real systemic change is going to happen that's why we're seeing all this upheaval in the financial systems and in our school education systems and of course in government. So that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think for you and I both spent a lot of time in the quote unquote self-development industry, personal growth,
Sure.
and
Prior, yeah.
this library of books you can see behind me is
Mm,
full of books that are about how one can liberate oneself from your own kind of construct and find
mm,
ways to forge your own destiny, which I think again, coming full circle is an imperative for this time. And I even think back to my first discovery of like Tony Robbins, and his whole
mm,
message was about personal power and
sure.
personal autonomy, personal responsibility. And he's been a beacon for that message for his lifetime, and that message is
Right.
still absolutely vital today. And in fact, it needs a renaissance today. But my biggest challenge always with the personal development industry is it limits the flourishing of human life to the self.
Mhm.
Whereas, and I kind of fell into that paradigm for a long time, and it's very easy to do that because self-development almost teaches you, and rightly, to focus on what's within your locus of control.
Right.
In many ways, it creates a limitation because then it says to people, well, these things outside us are so big, so these agendas are so grand that how can we influence them? How that but we can influence the world around us, and it's shown me as well the importance of some of the structures and systems in terms of how it directly has an impact on our ability to flourish. So no matter how much self-growth, and we can manage our own emotions around it and our mental state and our own activities, but ultimately the last 5 years has shown me that sometimes the outer world will encroach upon that in ways that you
Mhm.
could never have seen. And that's not only problematic in the instance where that happens, but also if we think about what creates the conditions for a healthy, beautiful, flourishing life, then our education, our formative years are really, really important. And if we look at the education system now, certainly from the lens of the British system here, I just don't understand. I don't think it's wired for building, healthy, self-sufficient, flourishing children. And we've
Mhm.
just spoken to Lenore Skenazy on the show on that, and Kerry McDonald, some really interesting interviews
Okay.
about the state of education, both in the US, but they're so pertinent to what we're doing here. But then you also look at the healthcare
Mhm.
system, healthcare. What,
Right.
it's so. if our structures that are supporting supposedly are in the interest of human life aren't
Yeah.
actually wired and incentivized to improve our own flourishing, then if we fail to look at that and leave it for someone else's responsibility, that is in discord with taking personal responsibility. Because yes, it
Mm-hmm.
does start with take care of yourself. And I was just on another interview and I was talking about, the first step to create the change in the world is to create the change in the world, your own world. Of course,
Sure.
it's the old
Mm-hmm.
adage of put your own oxygen mask on first. If your garden's out of order, don't try and fix someone else's garden before you tend to your own.
Mm-hmm.
But once you've got the lawnmower under control, metaphorically, and your garden's looking tidy, then you can start to turn your attention and think, well, actually, how can I contribute to these other structures and have a voice on, where the direction of humanity is going? Because
Mm-hmm.
self-development almost takes us away from that. So the last few years has really given me an insight that really, if we strip down to really living a life of passion and having a pursuit of flourishing, then we can't purely look within. We
Right.
have to also look without, and it's like personal transformation meets systemic transformation, and removing the veil that we can't influence that around us, because that's
Mm-hmm.
been for me one of the most poisonous ideas is that we can't influence, we can't control it.
Yeah.
Sure, we don't
Right.
have the same level of influence as we do over, what I wear today, what I eat today, if I train today,
Mm-hmm.
but when we start to recognize that there are structures that are no longer serving humanity, and enough of us say, you know what, there must be a better way, then we can take all of that self development, that learning, that inspiration, and we
Mm-hmm.
can then start to put it into new ideas, because the world is starving for new
Mm-hmm.
ideas. We're drowning in information, but starving for wisdom, as Tony would say. But
Mm-hmm. True.
we're actually starving for new ideas,
Mm-hmm.
really. I feel
Yeah.
like we're stuck in resistance to an old world, and we need to really get our imaginative capacity up to the next level so that we can actually start to dream into existence what the future could look like.
Right.
Because the old adage, if you don't have a plan, then somebody else does. And that's true at the systemic level as much as it is at the individual level. So there are many
Sure.
people now resisting against the changes in the world, but we've got to move out of resistance and into creation now.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Obviously, new world events and new problems require new solutions. So I love bringing in that imaginative effect. Like, obviously, you have people like Tesla and Einstein, and really some of our greatest thinkers, poets, philosophers, even our engineers have touted like the benefit of imagination. That it's not just, daydreaming. It's not just you thinking thoughts or painting imaginary pictures in your brain. It's literally, in my world, you channeling and calling through consciousness in order to create reality. I feel like that's literally all we're ever doing, ironically. And if we can understand the power of that tool, then we can use our imaginary benefit to create systemic change and go from what I'm hearing you say is really go from a me-centered focus to a we central focus. And I do believe that's important. I'll add only this, that a lot of times in the personal development world or spiritual world or conscious awake, blah, blah, whatever term you want to give it, we're often thinking that I have to be whole and complete until I can go
Yeah.
do that. And that
Yes,
can
yes.
be a really tricky loop.
Oh, yeah.
Often, right, it could be a trap. Oftentimes, you getting, like you said, just getting your mowed lawn and at least the seed plants, the seed planted. Okay, good. Foundation is done. Now look around. You probably have some space to go help your neighbor's garden or go to a soup kitchen or be of service in some way or start speaking to the larger issues. You don't have to wait till the garden's grown and you've harvested the garden and you've done that 3 seasons in a row and you feel like you have it perfected and systems are in place and you've hired a gardener. Now I can go help other people, right? It's like you can actually build the plane as we fly it. And so as long as you feel you have a stable base, you can start to shift that me focus, and it'll probably actually help you or I grow that much more by then turning our attention outward and being of service to others. I find that's one of the biggest steps to getting out of our own way and getting off of our own problems is to help somebody else with theirs.
Yeah, I'm with you on
Yeah.
that. And I think that's the important distinction. It's not me versus we, because I think that in itself, that relation, in the philosophies, the kind of guiding philosophies of the world, the libertarian idea of the individual, and then the kind of collectivist idea of the we, both have very different manifestations in the real world in terms of a philosophy. But when we think
Mm,
about the individual as serving or in service to others outside of ourselves. It's not me versus we. It's me and we. It's me and us. You
Right.
know, and I think that's important because, and I could get deep into I actually relish the philosophical argument because I would probably have become more libertarian in my ideology in the last few years, but
Me too.
or adapted part of that into my overall complex philosophy, which isn't bound by any singular set of ideas. But nonetheless, I've also seen the damage of groupthink when we get into an overly we mentality, and sacrifice the me. But bizarrely, within the core of the we're doing it for the we, there is a deep rooted me. A lot of the ideas that we saw in the last couple of years around protecting other people, when you really strip it back, it's the scared individual who wants to be protected. It's not actually about the protection of others. At the core of it, if you strip out the layers, it's the individual still who wants to feel safe.
Yeah.
Under the guise of doing it for others. So I think we also have to be clear on our motivations when we start to look at that. But there is a reciprocal benefit in service-based leadership to others because we grow as we serve, and that's to riff off your point. I went through a trap of feeling I needed to have a level of knowledge or skill or ideas before I got started in
Right.
this work to make a difference in the world. And that became a great trap, and it led to procrastination and perfectionism and self-doubt and this limiting voice that came into my head to say, who are you to do that? Whereas what I found was the more I embraced that uncertainty and actually went out to pursue the things I was trying to achieve, the more the sense of self would expand, not self in the egoic sense, but
Right.
the knowledge would transform into expertise and wisdom because uh, I found myself in a trap, and I make the analogy of like breathing in. So all of those books, I haven't read all of those books, but let's presuppose I've read quite a lot of books. I have read an astounding amount of it. It's been to lots of events, courses, programs. It's like, it's deep breathing in, but if we hold it for too long, we eventually will die. So,
Right.
so like the application of the knowledge
Right.
is for me is the breathing out, and it's that circular flow then of constantly learning new things, but also in practice we have to keep that flow going because that was the trap I got into, and I got very stuck when I was just breathing in knowledge. So it's the application of which creates true understanding, and I've learned more in the last 5 years from just almost instinctively acting. But then taking regular breaks to go, okay, well, what can we learn and reflect from this?
Sure.
And who's done that over there before us? What great text can help inform what I'm doing? So it's this beautiful intersection or interrelationship between doing and becoming.
Absolutely. I love that. I always say that
Doing the being, it's all,
our being should inform our doing. It shouldn't be
uh,
the other way around. Yeah. It
yeah, I
can be
also
the other way around. Sometimes our doing does inform like how we get to show up differently, but it should start from who am I being? And then when you're clear about that, who you are and who you're being, it becomes clear what you should be doing or you get to be doing.
yes, and it's difficult because it's again like the being. There's so many facets of the being. Like you can look at, like, say, for instance, your values, your character. I do believe that we can cultivate our values in stillness. I do believe we can cultivate our principles in stillness,
Sure.
but they are limited. It's like, again, it's like the same notion of really what I was just talking about in terms of expanding knowledge. You're increasing your potential, but
Right.
potential unapplied is in effect, if in effect, will go to waste. So if we only work on the being and in our stillness come to an understanding of who we really are and our values and what we care about the most and our principles, and it's until then that interacts with the outside world that it comes alive. It's like turning the power on. It's like the plug is already
Right.
plugged in your being. Until you turn the power on, it's like it's really living the principles, living the values is where the challenge really comes because and again, the last few years has really tested me in terms of living in accordance with my values because
Sure.
I've gone against the tide in a lot of the way I've done in my work, and I've had to face a great deal of animosity from certain groups, and even
Same.
within the in group because like I am flexible when I adapt and I shift, and I don't always meet the demands of certain individuals or groups, and therefore like I come under attack from the same people who supported me yesterday, and it's challenging to then stay in my values of holding space for whatever emerges which you can't experience in stillness alone, in simply in the being. Like interacting with the outside world is what tests our ability to hold steadfast in our being. But I'm curious to explore this with you, actually, Dallas, because I think what I'm witnessing now in the world is actually a lack of principles, and I'm struggling to make the distinction specifically between principles and values. I think they are important definitions to clarify. But let's take principles at the moment politically, for instance. You could yesterday stand against what the blue team were doing for various reasons, and then permit the same thing when your new team is in power, and there's
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
Totally. Yep.
and not rebel against the same thing.
Yeah, I've been speaking to this, and I probably was that your full. Did I cut you off? Was that your full point? Because I believe I understand exactly what you're saying, and this is something I've mentioned more than once, where um, it becomes this blue no matter who. And so then or red until I'm dead. And so what happens is no, like you just said, no matter who's in power, I'm going to agree with their principles and philosophies and what their strategies are, and be completely asleep to the fact that, wait, that's actually what the other guy was also doing, and actually it might even be worse. Are you really paying attention? And so the bigger thing, besides waving our flag and getting on the right team and becoming completely tribal, is that individual discernment based on merit. So I don't like, even though, like you, I've gone a little bit more conservative and would consider myself more libertarian at this point. I'm not so blind to just be waving Trump and Elon flag and say, red till I'm dead and everyone else is wrong. It's like, no, still humans. And as long as we
Yes.
require mommy and daddy government to watch over us, we're going to
Yes.
have humans who are going to fuck up.
Yeah.
And so I get to discern based on individual merit of their actions and to stay alert, which is what got me to shift from being blue no matter who, growing up poor, growing up in a blue collar family, growing up thinking everyone of course needed to be treated equal, all the general ideas that we hear from the left liberal side, which used to look very different than they do now in their extremist form. um, I was completely on board with. I was hanging out with drag queens and transvestites when I was 19 years old, going to house clubs, and I was breakdancing and they were voguing, and I thought it was the best thing fucking since sliced bread. It was amazing. We're all getting along. Why would you be prejudiced? I grew up in the hood. I was literally the minority. So those ideas on a base level, that we all get to be treated fairly, not necessarily equally, because that's a different story, another rant for another time, of course. But when that gets co-opted and you're blue no matter who, you can't see that you've been co-opted with the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's where it comes to answer your point or speak to your point, to just individual discernment and merit of the actual actions. I don't agree with everything that's happening with what Trump's doing. I don't love the way how Israel and Palestine is being handled. Other things I'm completely on board with and can't understand why people aren't seeing it. So does that?
But then having that pragmatic view is the key,
Yeah.
and I think that's
And challenging, because like you said, sometimes you'll get love from those people who support you, and then they'll sling arrows, and you're like, wait, we were just agreeing 5 minutes ago. Why are you attacking me now?
it's become so fragmented based upon individual pieces.
Right.
And it's like, well, who are you? It's like, I'm someone who just stands in my principles. That's it. And it's like people, we live in a world that now tries to identify people based upon the group that they're in and the views that they have. I don't know how we got there. Social media undoubtedly played a role, but it's not just about politics. It's
Sure.
like the decisions that you make on a daily basis and what you consume and what you view and how you treat other people. And I just feel like we've become disconnected with our values and principles.
So much. It's also this idea that we have to agree with every point another person has in order for us to get along.
And you have to caveat everything. It's like, right, so these are the assumptions. Like, I don't want to list every assumption. It's of course this and this and this and this and this and this and this. But it's like, I almost, like the credits at the end of the film, there's like a long list of things. I almost feel like need a constant stream of caveats to run down my screen, just for the person who says, it's like, okay, like if I stand for the principle of peace, of course I disagree with that act of aggression. I don't need to every time, in order to make this point, say that that was also wrong. But that's what people want. Because if you don't, you don't get it. Like, no, I do get that, but I just don't feel like I need to. If you listen to the overarching message rather than the tiny little piece of the narrative that you focused on, you'll see that I'm standing for the principle of peace. Therefore, I don't need to call out every single act of violence, because by default, there is an implicit assumption that, I stand against violence, so
Excellent. Right.
so tricky in this current environment. And no wonder why people are afraid to speak out about things they care about or stand for things that they care about, because they know they're going to get judged. And people want to fit in, they want to be loved. And it's the great, some of the greatest fears that human hold is not fear of not being enough or not being loved. So when you live in a digital environment that literally it creates fractures in both of those continually, if you put yourself out there, tough life.
Right.
Tough time to be alive. Beautiful, but tough time to be alive.
Yeah. To agree fully. It's that old adage, that, tough times create good men, good men create easy times create hard times. And, the circle goes round and round. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but, I think these are, shaping us for what's coming next. And it is tough, but beautiful, I think. Yeah. I believe even just having that frame helps us to navigate it a little bit easier. So of those beautiful books back there, is there a favorite or a couple of favorites that you feel shape some of your new attitude and perspective and help you awaken to this life of passion for you? You may want to share with the audience.
There's the old classic over there. I referenced dear beloved, not forgotten, Stephen Covey recently. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I just clocked that one. And there's an entire book. I think the one I looked at the entire book is on one of the key habits, but I've got the 7 habits over there as well. And habit 4 I referenced on another show, which is seek first to understand before being understood. And we live in a world right now where everyone wants to have a voice, but no one wants to listen. And that's the inverse of that principle. And I interviewed a gentleman this week called Peter Coleman from the University of Columbia. He's written a book called The Way Out, which is about how do we overcome the polarization in society, this what he calls toxic polarization, this radical division. He's even got this lab which he calls Difficult Conversations Lab, which sounds fascinating. And he and I himself, we would be politically in different positions, but we were able to have this beautiful conversation about the state of reality and our inability to communicate. But if you look at the social interactions, it's very rare to see someone who's simply there to understand how someone came to their point of view. What typically happens is you get an expression, which is then met with a counter expression, as opposed to, well, tell me, how did you come to that? So there's no seeking to understand. It just starts with judgment. And that in itself is very, very tricky if we want to actually navigate this polarized world, because we're living so far out of our own paradigm that we're not actually seeing how other people have got to where they've got. And some of the difficult conversations I've had around some of these, and this isn't a trick, but it's often because of the nature of the news cycle we live in. And I made this like reference to like the fashion industry. It used to be seasonally. Do you remember? It was like the spring catalog, the summer catalog. I think it was like twice a year, like the winter catalog. I've never been into fashion. I'm not, I just wear black. I'm not particularly stylish.
Okay, gotcha.
I can say you're a
little
style
bit,
guy.
little bit.
But
and I remember all the catalogs back in the day.
Yeah, but it used to, and it's like then it literally, remember, it's like flavor of the month became a term. Like this is the flavor of the month. It became a monthly. So it went from seasons to monthly. Then it's like weekly. Then it's daily. And then you got like shopping channels that are literally changing the fashion every 5 minutes. Yeah. But like the moral outrage works in the same way as like seasons now. But the seasons are
that's
daily.
A great perspective. Yeah, great analogy. Yeah.
So like I got back from holiday last week and I literally tapped out, took a digital detox. But I knew there would have been a flavor of the week. And there was. In the UK, there was this Supreme Court judgment on one of the issues we were just talking about, which is about gender rights, etc. I'd paid no attention to that while I was away, but straight away, it took me 2 minutes to log on and everyone had an idea about what was going on. Everyone had a perspective. And of course, everyone was, it ended up in this any complex set of issues comes down to this view versus that view. All the nuance in between gets forgotten, and that person who believes this then attacks the person that believes that, and there's no seeking to understand any of that gray nuance in between. So we get these like repeat cycles. But the thing is, this is why I mentioned this around when you seek to understand, because what happens is if you have a new thing that you're deeply passionate about every single day or week based upon some trigger, it's very unlikely that your personal viewpoint on that thing that you're triggered about is actually informed by what I would call explanatory depth. And you may have some internal values that inform your perspective on it, but it's likely tribal. So what I found with difficult conversations is often when you actually ask someone out of genuine insight and curiosity, tell me about how you came to that. What I found with some of the things that have happened in the last few years, particularly with COVID, when you actually start to ask how people came to believe what they believe and what they've, what led them to come to their perspective, it's very surface level and shallow. Not always, but there's a very, very big divide between someone who's got depth on a subject. They've really invested time and insight to look at multiple perspectives and handle complexity versus to respond to the simplicity and the oversimplified narratives that we're presented with. But nonetheless, despite that, I think that book there for me taught me the importance early on of trying to understand someone else's map of the world before to inflict inflict. It does feel like an infliction. It's like an
no, but it is. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I love that you brought up that principle in that book. So interesting, because usually when I reference that book, which is also one of my favorites, that's pretty much the main one of the 7 that I'm referencing is that one, especially now because it's so valuable and important.
Yes, and the other one
we're so quick to rush to judgment.
I just read this on holiday. So do you know Naval? Have you heard of
That
Naval?
one's new to me. No, the
I can't
almanac
even
of
describe. Yeah, Naval Ravikant. I literally can't even tell you specifically why this book made me buzz, but
okay.
it's one of those. It's one of the books that makes you go, someone is really thinking deep about what's going on in the world, and they really get it. The whole book is simply about this. This isn't a pitch for his book, by the way, but it's like wealth and happiness. The way he approaches it is just so principled, so smart. And he did a great podcast with Joe Rogan, and he's been on Chris Williamson's show as well. And just the discourse. This is one of the most inspirational books I've read in a long time. And Eric Jorgensen, who created this, is an almanac. So what's interesting about an almanac, this is just a segue. This guy, what this author did, Eric, is he was like, this guy, I want to profile him. I want to capture the essence of his work. So what he did is he took all of his podcasts, his written works, his tweets. He's done all these tweet storms, and he assembled it all painstakingly to construct it in a form that can be digested in a simple.
Oh, that's great.
So it's very smart how he's done it. And then he's done another one with Balaji from Balaji, who's big in the kind of like crypto space.
Okay.
And both of them are just fascinating. I mean, this was like 100% resonance. Balaji like blew my mind in different ways. And some things I was like, oh my God, you're down into the techno utopia world that freaks me out. But nonetheless.
It does, yeah, a little bit. I'm a fan of the techno world as long as long as technology I think in order for us to continue to thrive as humans in the new world, it's just keeping in mind that we get to use it and be careful of when it's using us.
And consent.
Much discernment around that. Yeah, that's one of those things for me that's implied around the we using it versus it using us, but 100%. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because a lot of times we don't. It's assumed or implied, or it's hidden behind a barrage of information that whoever reads, right? I'm sure those individuals are out there, but whoever's reading the 40 pages of like, do you accept this before using this app? And it's like, yes, and I have to get to lunch. So click yes and fucking go on with my day. So yeah, consent, the interesting one nowadays.
Just a quick one on that, because in the UK now they're about to trial this like sun blocking technology. Not like sunblock as in like you're a pale gingerhead kid. You need to
I know what you mean. We've been doing it here for years, and I think they've already been doing it there. They're just trying to bring it where it's forefront to the people, and they get the official consent versus the assumed consent, because they've been
Yeah,
spraying here for over 3 decades, and now we're getting, from what I hear, RFK and certain people are trying to ban it. So,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, but that's where there's no consent. So when an action is taken that
right,
affects like
right.
whole portions of humanity, there's no consent
Mhm.
there. But I suppose that deviates from where I was initially thinking around things like AI and robotics. And it's
Mhm.
so complex because there are tools that can really, with all of these things, they can liberate us, or they can hold us hostage,
Imprison us.
captive,
Absolutely.
hold us captive.
Yeah.
Um, and it's so tricky because I also find myself in the mind of, oh, these things can help me do this and this and this, and that they do. But the other part of me goes, well, how far away from nature are we being taken here? Like there was a day
Exactly.
about 5 years ago, I was lying in the field where I used to live up in Bristol, and I was looking up in the sky and thinking, like, how many new technologies are just solving the problems of the last technology created, and like how deep have we gone? It's like an inception. How
Oh yeah.
far away have we become from how far have we come from our true nature? Do we actually need any of this stuff? Like we get caught in the doing of the doing, that we lose our being that we started with.
Mhm.
And I
Totally.
think it's important to keep that connection. Now, I'm someone
Yeah.
I do love technology. I've always loved technology. I've always been fascinated by innovation.
Mhm.
So I'm not a nature purist. I'm not like screw technology. But at the same time, and we wouldn't be doing this like this
Right.
wonderful piece of technology that would have cost thousands and thousands decades ago.
Mhm.
Beautiful that we can do this and connect across the world, like literally in real time. But I think it's important that we don't lose sight of our sense of humanity during this time. This is one of my greatest fears for the period of history
Mm.
that we're in right now.
Yeah.
And, it's not political, but it is political. But I think political class are becoming more influenced by the technological class,
Mhm.
often referred to the technocrats, but technocracy is actually often falsely associated purely with technology. It's not necessarily purely technology. But if uh, the technological class have increasing influence over the political paradigm and start to usurp the kind of governance factors. And again, that's a whole big conversation. I'm not even sure I
Right.
believe in government
No, we're
anymore.
gonna maybe we'll do more than one show, obviously, but yeah, keep going. Because
But the
all of
point
these are big conversations.
they are big ones. The point I'm coming to is this: is that
Yep.
if technologists have the power over government, and then it's like this technology is for the greater good, as we've seen in the last few years, that often has vast unintended consequences, and we're not able to consent or opt out. So my greatest fear for this time is and I'm never a fan of regulation or rules or government intervention, but right now I'm like, well, how else what other mechanisms can we consider when it comes to the outrageous pace of growth of technology, which is
Sure.
growing faster than our ability to keep up morally, ethically, um, legally? So it's
Yeah.
tricky. I'm never one for mass intervention, and
No, no.
I like the idea that liberating creativity, but where do we look at how do we constrain ourselves from destroying ourselves? That's probably the biggest question that's guiding my thought at the moment on
Mm.
emergent tech.
That's that gray area
This is meant
because
to be the life of passion. I've got off on
right.
this.
No, no, no. This is what you're passionate about. No, what you're showing
It's
is what
true.
is
Yeah,
what
yeah,
you're currently passionate
yeah,
about.
yeah.
This is the show. Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Everything I think you've shared so much is you being, you know, uh, being a good. I'd like to believe being a conscientious human, wanting to be a good friend, good father, good neighbor, good good husband. And so these things, I'm sure, have become so much more top of mind for you, especially because, like you said, a lot of it's this outside thing where, yeah, I can have my internal control mechanisms and manage what I can manage. And that doesn't necessarily change where we're going collectively. And how do we also keep that in mind as well? So it's important that someone's passionate about this and maybe even helps the rest of us get a little bit more passionate about this. That's why I wanted you on the show. What I would say is part of what you're speaking to in that technology thing and how far do we let do we let it run, is that it's that gray area, because without our forefathers building constitutions, right? The Constitution is a level of like parameter of where we're building and how we get to treat one another. So it's like, yes, I don't want to be micromanaged or have, an amendment and have, a law for everything and have this overreaching government that then just creates a lack of freedom. But we also do need, as they say, like in the more spiritual communities, we need river banks for the river, for the flowing river. We need some kind of container and structure so that
Absolutely.
can help support where all of this stuff is going. The trick is us getting on board in a fairly unified way as to what those parameters are. That's what I think we're figuring out. That's where the pendulum continues to swing back and forth, and I hope we find a place where we can come together on that. But I would like to ask two quick questions before we go. I want to know, number one, when you have been in these places where your passion was latent, you use that word at the beginning of the podcast. What was one of your tools or one of the things that you helped to navigate yourself through that? Because somebody might be hearing this and want to be more vocal or passionate about something, whether it be politics or something else, and the narratives going on and feel in their own way that they're stuck and unable to do that. How did you navigate that in your life?
Yeah, it's a good one. There's been several times in different contexts that I've had to figure things out. And a lot of it really, like, it's oversimplifying it, but it's self-inquiry in a
Sure.
way. And there's different modes
Mm-hmm.
of self-inquiry. Like journaling has been a massive one for me, where I
Okay.
confront, it helps me to confront the reality. And, like we're now discovering with AI, you need quality prompts to get quality answers. But the same is true for our own self-inquiry. So when it came to stepping,
So good.
when
That's so good.
when it came up for me standing up as an activist during COVID, where I was deeply passionate, but I was concerned and afraid of doing so, and how people might judge me, and how my business may be put on the line, and how people I respect uh, I may lose the love of the people that matter. It's all a myth that we tell ourselves, but there are very real consequences. I know that I've been very lucky that most of my friends haven't abandoned me, but there are plenty of people in the last few years who have severed ties with friends, family, business colleagues, etc. So it comes with risk. Fortunately, most choices when it comes to actually igniting our passion don't come with the same level of societal level risk and fear of getting arrested and all that sort of stuff in this little work I've been up to.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope the introduction gives some context to that, because that will sound random otherwise.
No.
um, the But it comes back to evaluating in your mind what's really most important to you, and then asking yourself, is that construct you've built in your head reality, about a limiting factor, or the thing that you're telling yourself about not to do something, and what is greater than, is it greater or lesser than the potential outcome? And it takes me all the way back to when I first knew that I wanted to pursue a different path than my corporate path, when I left my corporate career in 2012. And I had a very early mentor who, I call him a mentor, I always have, but it's a guy that I met at a conference who sat me down over coffee and was just like further ahead in the game than me. He was like, look, Dan, if you don't quit your job, what is the worst case scenario for you? Like, what are the consequences of indecision, of decide, or making the decision not to quit? And I wrote out all the consequences, and none of them were really that bad. It's like, man, worst case, I end up back with my family. Like, I've got a good home. I know, like, I've got the mental fortitude not to like resort to like drugs and alcohol. Other people may not have that fortitude, I know, but I knew that I had this safety net to a degree. And then he asked me to look at the other side, and he was like, well, what would happen if you did do that? What are all the possible upsides? And I was like, and it's like all of a sudden, like, the possible upside was so great that, so it gave me the courage. So it's often what suppresses the passion itself is the fear of what happens on the other side of it. So when we actually look at, and through self-inquiry, ask ourselves, what are the consequences of inaction, and what are the outcomes of action, the desired action that we're trying to take, often we'll find the outcomes that we're trying to achieve come with far greater potential than the risks of not taking the action. And therefore, that for me, that period of self-inquiry, no matter when I get stuck, when my passion gets taken down, I always have to come back to self-inquiry and say, what's really happening here? Why am I feeling this way, and how could I choose a different outcome from here? And it feels like in this moment in history, we're having to almost become martial artists and recognize that we will get caught in corners, but there's always a next move. And that thing for me, knowing that there's always a next move, is the thing that keeps my passion alive. And there are plenty of things in the world to get excited about right now. And I think the hardest part is channeling that, actually. Like, when the flame burns bright, it's like giving it fuel and giving it direction. Like, that is the biggest challenge for me now, more than igniting the passion. It's actually how to channel the passion, and that
Yeah.
comes with its own set of challenges. But I think, yeah, self-inquiry, journaling, meditation, and then reminding myself always what my driving force is and why it matters.
Excellent. Yeah, that end point obviously becomes like it's the North Star,
Yeah,
right?
100%.
And yet that internal inquiry and that journaling it's so powerful. Thank you for bringing that up. Really powerful tool. I find a lot of people will attempt to just simply think these things out and not catch that they're looping and
Yes.
not really giving honest honest perspective to what the thought is and whether or not it is real or is it the imaginary tiger that we're running from. And I found when you get that out of yourself and put it on paper and you look at it, you're like, that's what I'm worried about. Like, that's not, wait, hold on. In my head, that was such a much bigger animal. That's such a scarier beast. And then I write it down and I'm like, oh, okay. And now you're much more able to flip it on its head and see what the alternative would be and go through that process so much easier. And,
Yeah. Those
I
loops,
love
those
writing for that.
Yeah, those loops you reference, the most sickening trap that I've been caught in so many times. Overthinking, sleepless
Mhm.
nights, and until you get it out. 'Cause to me, I've come to understand that the problem and the solution, they can't coexist in the same thought pattern.
Mm.
You have to break the pattern by getting it down and saying, what is the problem that I'm really facing right now? Uh,
Mhm.
what is the outcome that I'm really seeking to overcome, and what is to achieve, and what is it I need to overcome to get there? And it's once you take it out in that form, and you start to put constraints in language on paper, all of a sudden your brain goes,
Mhm.
it's like you literally, the circular thinking is trying to clarify the problem and seek the solution at the same time, and it's very difficult to do that until you extrapolate it on paper.
Boom. Final question. That's beautiful. Outside of the political stuff and having your new home around nature, anything else that you're really passionate about you want to share with the audience that might send them in a beautiful direction or enlighten them in some way?
Well, I'm a recent father. My son is 3 years old, and
Awesome. Congrats.
figuring out how I can be the best role model for my son, and
Mhm.
that's the most beautiful growth journey. He's a great teacher to me, and I hope that I will be a great teacher to him or a great role model to him. And it's, things change when you become a father. It felt like I became an adult overnight in a very healthy way,
Mm.
something that I feared for a long time. But yeah, now not only is my actions informed by wanting to do the best for him and my family, but it fires up my work even more when it comes to looking at the world he's going to grow up into, and I want to know that I played my part in just making it a little bit better for him when he steps out as a independent
Mhm.
human as he grows up. So yeah, he's a renewal to my fire, and
Beautiful.
yeah, we may at some point have a second on the way, which will, I'm sure, compound that even further. But we'll
For
we'll see
sure.
what this year brings.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I believe that you are leaving, you have been and are leaving the world a better place for him. So, in watching you, I've been inspired, impressed. Obviously, I'm also, as you know, been doing my own research around certain things that we align with, but a lot of who you've interviewed and things that you've shared, and you being passionate about the things happening in the world have been supportive to me. And so I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for coming on the show, sharing what it looks like and to live a life of passion in your world. And I know this is going to be supportive for those who have listened. So thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you too, brother. I think right now, I think the world is lacking that passion at scale. So, the work
Mm,
that you're doing as well to ignite that within people, I think is so important, because I truly think part of the solution to the worldly issues that we're finding right now is actually when people find that deeper passion and purpose within them. I think we
mm,
become much more immune to these external factors, Matthias Desmet, who's one of my favorite guests of all time on my show, talked about the meaning and purpose crisis. And I think the more we connect with that passion right now, the more we can actually defend against external realities that we're kind of grappling with. So massive kudos to you, igniting passion across the world. So thank you so much, my man.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right, brother. Till next time.
Till next
Thanks
time.
everybody for watching.